So there's one last group that I have to talk to you about. These are the Denisovans. I am going to send you off to watch the crash course video on them because I think that Hank does a much better job than me, but I'm going to try and give you a little bit of background on them, and then we're going to do some exam practice. Yay! So what we have here, you've got modern humans on the left, you've got Neanderthals on the right, and here we are, stuck in the middle with you. These are the Denisovans or the Denisovans. Now, relative to each other, you can see that they're quite similar. They're quite kind of thick in the bones. They look very, very similar, but they're almost like a link between the modern humans and the Neanderthals. So what are the differences? You can see they had a really large brain case here. This is an artist's rendition of what we think Denisovans may have looked like. And then I would really, really encourage you, don't skip it. Yeah, please watch the video about Denisovans because it runs through the history of where they came from. So what are these and why do I care? And why aren't they classified as a Neanderthal, or why aren't they classified as a modern human? So what we did is about 2008, yeah, really, really big, important discovery, is they found this tiny, tiny, tiny finger bone. So we're in the top row of the table here. They found this tiny, tiny finger bone, and it was found in the Denisova cave in Russia. And what this finger bone told us is that it wasn't a human, it wasn't a Homo sapien, it wasn't a Neanderthal, it was a third species that we aged at about 70,000 to 50,000 years. Yeah, so we had this other human that existed at the same time as Neanderthals and Homo sapiens, but we'd only ever found this tiny little finger bone. So it wasn't very much information, but it was enough for us to go, there is another species of hominin around. Then we started to find more evidence. So we started to reclassify different evidence. So it turns out they'd found another tooth in that cave that they thought was human. But it turns out they looked at it again and went, oh, hang on, I don't think this is human. I'm going to say that's Denisovan. So we started to reclassify. You can see here we're reclassifying there are different publications. We found some more teeth. We found a part of a jaw. This was big. Yeah, we thought, again, it was human until 2019 when we reclassified it as Denisovan. And then we also found in 2012, we found this arm and leg bone fragment, and we reclassified those in 2016. And now we think we've found a bit of a brain skull, the parietal lobe. Yeah, we've found a bit of parietal bone as well in that same cave. So it turns out that this one cave has given us all of this evidence base for this kind of other subgroup of humans, this new member of the human family. And what we've done is we've looked at the DNA from it. So when you look at the DNA, in particular, it's the mitochondrial DNA, so the DNA that's within a mitochondria. So the Denisovan DNA differs from modern humans by 385 bases, whereas the difference between the Neanderthals and modern humans is 202. So that to me means that the Neanderthals and the humans had a more recent common ancestor than the Denisovans. In comparison, you get chimpanzees at 1400. So you can see that these are much closer related to us than the chimpanzees are. This suggested that the Denisovans diverged from modern humans and Neanderthals somewhere between 1.3 to 800,000 years ago, whereas the modern humans diverged from the Neanderthals between 600 and 321,000 years ago. And here's another little picture to kind of show you what that might be. So you can see that we've got Homo heidelbergensis, Homo erectus, probably left here, and then we think that somewhere in this region here, so in that Middle Eastern region, we had a divergence. The Neanderthals kind of started to go over here into Europe and into Russia. Into Russia mostly, and the north of Asia. And the Denisovans also kind of branched off, but we found Denisovans as far away as actually Papua New Guinea, yeah, and Indonesia. So that's pretty interesting that the Neanderthals kind of stayed in the cold region, but the Denisovans kind of traveled down throughout Europe. And how do we know this? So here's our prediction of what the tree is. You can see the Neanderthals and the Denisovans. Some people predict that they've kind of branched off here, but this here is my number one picture, and this is the one that's in your book. So what we've found is that these, I'm going to ignore the Hobbit people again. So these are the modern day kind of genetic links. We've got African DNA, we've got French DNA, we've got Han Chinese, and we've got Melanesian. So Melanesian is things like Indonesia, Australia. So our indigenous population is considered Melanesian origin. So we've branched off from the Melanesians. And what we can see is that Melanesians actually contain Denisovan DNA in their genome. The Han Chinese don't, the French don't, the Africans don't, but the Melanesians do. So what this links is it tells us that around 40,000 years ago, the Denisovans, this weird kind of third human species that existed alongside the Neanderthals and the Sapiens, they must have interbred with the Melanesians. Whereas with the Neanderthals, we think that they must have interbred with an ancient ancestor of all three of these. So the French, the Han Chinese, and the Melanesian, because we can find Neanderthal DNA in all three of those groups. So what is some of the issues with this? Yeah. And this is what we're talking about, that changing kind of perspective of this. So it's really hard to say that we are definitely the same species. Yeah, or that we're definitely separate species, from the Neanderthals and the Melanesians. Because if we were different species, should we be able to interbreed and produce fertile offspring? No. And so this whole thing is what has allowed us to redefine ourselves as not just being Homo sapiens, yeah, but we're actually Homo sapiens sapiens, and some oh damn it. So we've got Homo sapiens, and some scientists are actually suggesting that there are 3 subspecies within Homo sapiens. We've got Homo sapiens sapiens, which is us. We've got Homo sapiens neanderthalensis, which is the Neanderthals. And we've got Homo sapiens denisova as well. Jeez, my writing is awful, isn't it, really? So all 3 of us are actually the same species. I don't know why I bothered rubbing it out if I'm going to rewrite it just as poorly. But all 3 of us are the same species, but these ones down here, we suggest that maybe we are all different subspecies of Homo sapiens. And this is kind of new evidence that keeps changing all the time. What we've found is that you can find this Denisovan kind of DNA in all of these populations. Have a look, you can even see it in South America, but it's not very common in Europe, which means that maybe they didn't branch out and live there. There's a timeline on page 13 for you to fill in the times, and I think I've given you blank boxes. You just need to fill in which one's Neanderthals, which one's Denisovans, which one is Homo sapiens. And you can use your textbook and the dates and on PowerPoint and online sources to fill in some information. Where did we find them? What features? 2 to 3 only. And was there any evidence of interbreeding? So what we can see here, here's another diagram that another scientist has interpreted. We think that there's this mystery hominin, which might not even be the Denisovans. It might be something else. We think maybe they interbred with Denisovans. We think the Neanderthals interbred with the Denisovans. Then the Denisovans interbred with the Asians or the Melanesians. And the Han Chinese. We think that maybe the Neanderthals interbred back here. We think maybe they also bred with these other type of humans. So really, really complex kind of interrelationships. You don't need to remember them, but you do need to know that they have a lot of confusion. So very last thing, I'm just going to go through one question, page 25. Here's the human family tree showing the relationship between different groups. you can see we've got all of these groups of Homo sapiens here. We've got Denisovans and we've got the Neanderthals. So based on the information below, Neanderthal DNA would not be found in. So if they interbred, essentially we think about this. All of that DNA would be found in all of these groups past there. Yeah, so I would find it in the Melanesians. And then it would also breed down here. You could probably find it in the Denisovans. You could probably find it in the Han group. But the blue group, so the African group, it's not, there's no connection there. So you wouldn't find it in the African group. Let's have a look at the next question. The next question says, the human most closely related to the Denisovans. Yeah, so we're going to go back. Where's our common ancestor? Here's our Neanderthals. So our most closely related to the Denisovans is actually going to be the Neanderthals. It's not going to be the Melanesians, because the Melanesians, like, although there's been some breeding there, they're not listed on here, and that's on purpose so that you don't get too confused. But that is kind of the end of that little chapter. And I think technically the end of the course.